Hi, Milo Manx. Today I'm going to show you the changes that were made in VW drum brake systems over the years. I'm also going to show you how to properly install drum brakes and show you how to fix your weak or non-working emergency brakes, also known as your parking brakes. I've had drum brakes on all my dune buggies, and they stopped on a dime. Dune buggies are 600 pounds lighter than a Volkswagen Beetle, and that weight difference makes the factory VW brake design more than adequate for your dune buggy. As hard as I would push on the pedal, that's how fast you would stop without locking up the tires and wheels going into a skid. I could stop so fast you were glad you had seatbelts on. There were 3 changes made to the Volkswagen brake system over the years. The first system was from 1957 to 64. The second from 65 to 67. And the third from 1967, newer. In 1967, there was a VIN brake. Somewhere in the production year, they went from 1.19 wide rear shoes to 1.56 wide rear shoes. Let me show you the differences in those design changes and what to be aware of. Let's take a look. This is a rear brake assembly I have mounted to the workbench to show you exactly what to check. And the first thing to check, once you get your brake drum off, is the wheel cylinder. You want to make sure it has stops in it. What I mean by that is I have another wheel cylinder here. You take off the boot, and the piston inside the wheel cylinder should have either a flange on it or a metal O-ring to keep it from going in too far. It should have a stop, like I said, built on it, so you can't keep on squeezing the pistons into the cylinder. There are some cheap aftermarket wheel cylinders out there that don't have these stops built in. If you don't have those stops, your brake lights tend to stick on, and also it's almost impossible to adjust your emergency brake without these stops that are in the wheel cylinder. To make sure you have the right wheel cylinder, you want to check to see if the distance from the lip of the backing plate to the outer part of the shoe is the same as that distance on the bottom of the shoe. If you have a wider brake wheel cylinder on it that makes it stick out too far at the top, you're going to lose a lot of your braking power because the shoes will be tilted inside the brake drum only by 3/16 of an inch, but that's a big difference, because the difference between 1.19 and 1.56 is 3/8 of an inch difference, which makes a wheel cylinder that goes into the middle of the shoe stick out 3/16 of an inch further. That's an easy check. What you're looking at right now is a 57 to 64 brake assembly. And how you can tell is by the adjuster down here. Let me take it off and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, a 57 to 64 brake shoe is straight down here at the bottom. What I mean by that is if you put the stick against it, I think you can see that it fits flat as compared to the top. It's flat against the shoe. And the adjuster here is cut straight. It's the same distance in height going across it. It fits flat on the shoe. And sticks out perpendicular. On 65 and newer brake shoes, you put a stick against it, you can see the bottom is angled. The adjuster for them is also angled. See, this end is wider and this end is thin. So when you put that on there, it has the same perpendicular angle as the other set. I've seen brake shoes mixed up between years and they don't sit on the adjusters correctly. This is something else you have to check. So like I said, this style with the angles is 65 and newer, and the straight ones are 57 to 64. You want to make sure it's the same both sides, because I've seen brake shoes mixed up left and right, front and back. All right. Here's another thing to be aware of. When you buy your brake hardware kit, it has 2 upper springs in it, 2 lower springs in it, 4 springs, 4 retaining cups, but it comes with 8 pins. It has 4 short pins and 4 long pins. The short pins are for the narrow shoes, the 1.19 wide shoes. The long pin is for the 1.56 wide shoes. If you have the narrow shoes and put the long pins in, the tip will hit your brake drum. Now we're going to show you the proper way to install your brake shoes. When you have everything off, get a can of CRC brake clean, spray it down, get all the grease and oil off of it. Maybe you had a leaking wheel cylinder or a leaking axle seal, but get all the grease off of it. Get all the dirt off of it. You want to get some sandpaper, or make sure that the star wheels don't bind up when you put those in. You want to have this bore cleaned out. You will need a can of white grease. Let's do the adjusters first. Take your star wheel, put some in the holes. Put some lube on your adjuster pins. Make sure that they turn in and out nice and easy the whole way in and the whole way out. Leave them out a couple threads. Put that in there. Do the same to the other side. Again, make sure it goes in and out the whole way nice and easy. Leave it out a couple threads. Put that in the bore. Take your white grease again and put a little bit on these mounting pads, because the brake shoe slides back and forth on them. Just like that. Make sure your pins are in. Make sure the right ones are in. These are the short ones because I have the narrow brake shoes. Line it up and put your brake shoe on. Get your pin through the hole. Set your spring and your cup on there. Try to get lined up before you take your tool and install it. Give it a 1/4 turn. Make sure it's locked in. And there's your rear one. Do the same for the front shoe. There we go. Try to get lined up again. There we go. And you put your return springs on. I have the official pliers to do these springs, but I found out it's easier if you take your vice grip and install them with that. Your thicker, heavier spring goes on top, goes in this hole. Oops, I forgot something. Don't forget about your emergency brake lever. This longer section goes out because it's against the lever here. Oh, and put some white grease on that too. There we go. So put your top spring in. Just like that. Put your bottom spring in. Goes in that bottom hole down here. Not up there, down there. They also have what they call an anti-rattle clip. It goes on this top spring and attaches to the push bar, the emergency brake push bar. Something like that. Okay, there you go. When you put your brake drum on, when you adjust the star wheel, to move this one out, to make the brake shoes tighter, you push on the top part of it, like that, and that makes it longer, makes it tighter. But on the other side, you have to push the bottom to get it to go out. When your brake shoe's on, when your brake drum is on, it should spin nice and loose. Turn the one adjuster until you start getting some drag and back it off till the drag stops. Then do the other side till you get a little bit of drag and back it off. If you're in a position where you have both sides together and both drums on, go in and hit the brake a couple times, then go back and adjust these again. You want to keep your Volkswagen brake shoes just a little on the loose side. In other words, that one click to keep it from dragging is where you want to be. Like I said at the start of this video, I wanted to show you how to fix your emergency brake so they work correctly. If you can see this little notch out right here, it's so that this lever can go all the way back. And if you notice, let me take the spring clip off, this anti-rattle clip. It's easier to show you that way. If you can see, there's movement in this lever, and that's simply because this bar is worn. Here's another one. It wears in here and wears in here. And it gives you that slack in the lever. Because as you know, your emergency brake cable hooks on here, goes out through this hole and pulls on the brake shoes to activate the parking brake. Both sides expand when you have your drum on there. So as one stops, the other side starts to go. But because this has been in use for like 50 years, you're going to have wear on this. And you want this as, once your brake shoes are adjusted to the drum, pull your drum back off and see if you have this looseness in here. You can do one of two things. It's hard to find these bars online. I did find them at a place called Wolfsburg West. They have them available. Or if you have a welder, you can put a little spot of weld in there and then take a fowle and fowle it down until you have just a little bit of play in that lever. I want to show you what a wore out bar looks like. This one here ain't bad. I still had emergency brakes on the Dune Buggy with these brake push bars. But if you would have one that's like this, that's worn a lot more than this one, Okay, that warn bar is in there right now. And you can see how worn it is. See how far this is way down here? Because it should be like that with just a little bit of play in it. Let's say like 1/16 of an inch. But this one has like a 1/2 inch of play in it. Your emergency brakes will not work that way. It has something to do with this lever mechanism that once it's so worn, they don't push as hard against the drums as they should. So like I said, if yours are worn, you can get an idea of how much they're worn by looking in here and moving it. And that one's like a 1/4 inch. This one was like a 1/16 of an inch. Put a spot of weld down in here so you can take your fowle and fowle it to the size that you need, so you have just that little bit of play in there. One thing I found out is that when you have a new bar or a bar that's the right length because you fixed it, your emergency brake cable will have to be a little bit longer because that lever is back the whole way now. If you're doing this on a Beetle, you just simply readjust your cables. But on Dune Buggies, you have to cut the emergency brake cables and put them into the shortening adapter to make them work. But now that the lever is back where it should be, you may not have enough room to adjust your emergency brake. So you may have to buy new emergency brake cables because they might have to be a little bit longer. In a Dune Buggy, there's your emergency brake lever, and here's the cable ends that you put on the cable once you cut it to length. Because you have those worn push bars giving you all that slop in the emergency brake lever system, you may find out that your cables are too short. You don't have room for adjustment. So you may have to buy new cables and make these up to 1 inch longer so you can adjust things correctly. Just one of those little things you have to do. I'd just like to include a few little notes to make sure I have everything covered. When you're working on a Manx Dune Buggy, you have to remember that any year brake system might have been put on it. So you have to pull drums and check. And also be aware that the parts could be mismatched between years. Another thing, if your brake shoes got wet because of a leaking axle seal or a leaking wheel cylinder, they should be replaced. The best master cylinder to have on your Dune Buggy or any vehicle is a dual circuit master cylinder. That way, if you get a leak in either the front or the rear system, you won't lose your brakes entirely. You just lose either the front or the rear. If you're running a single circuit master cylinder, remember to check your brake fluid on a regular basis. If you don't, that's where the emergency brake comes in real handy. I think that's about it. This is Milo Manx from MyersManxForSale.com. Later. So you jerk, you're gonna get it right this time? That sounded like a fucking idiot. Yeah, you just figured it out right there. Hi, Milo Manx. Today I'm going to show you how to do something.